So, yeah, the Concord Cope has been absolutely unreal today. So, apparently, Bungie has decided to allow all the journalists to finally score their copies of, geez, what is this game called? Marathon. Jeez, did I say Concord? Anyway, the Marathon Cope is completely unreal today. But yeah, so they've allowed them to score Marathon, and unsurprisingly, they've all scored it very high, while something like Crimson Desert was scored with a 6, Marathon was scored with a 9, just like, what was their score for everything else? Like Concord was scored, I guess, pretty highly, High Guard was scored decently high too, and, you know, it's not surprising, right? But the cope with the fan base of this game is absolutely unreal and unhinged. This is like on a whole nother level today, because naturally I had to open my big mouth, right? Because we're on Twitter, of course, you know, about these things, because the numbers just, they're not good, right? So you've got a whole faction of us who are looking at the numbers, and we're identifying patterns, right? You know, you can identify the pattern here, looking at various different games, different types of games, stuff like that, and see where they were and what happened and where they went down and all this other stuff. You can identify the pattern, and the pattern for Marathon has been on a downward trajectory of about 5 to 10K per week, mind you. And this is after they have launched their in-game stuff, which, you know, is funny. You'd think that would make the numbers go up when they release that kind of stuff, because that's why the journalists got to throw out their things. But, you know, you've got to spend the week grinding for materials and stuff to be able to access and do this in-game thing. And if you're not playing throughout the week, playing through the weekend, I guess, is a bust. There's no need for you to go do that, because you can't do the thing if you didn't play throughout the week. But anyway, so why is the cope completely unreal with these people? It is great, because it is like High Guard level of cope. Okay, let's go over here real quick. High Guard Studio says it's looking for a core group of fans that love us, not to top the Steam charts. We don't need player counts to be super huge. And this is something that was actually told to me earlier today by somebody on the Twitter when they were arguing with me because they didn't understand what I was trying to, you know, say, right? And they're like, we don't need numbers. And it's like, that sounds familiar. Huh. Yeah, didn't High Guard say the same thing? And then we saw where that went, because you do need the numbers, right? You know, it doesn't matter how many people play the game. What matters most is the game is loved by the people who play it. And let's see, where does that exactly get us, really? Well, it gets you this downward trajectory right here for starters, until you're in the ground and you don't have anything. See, here's the thing. Marathon is made by a AAA studio, Bungie. It has got AAA backing. It had a AAA budget. Therefore, it costed a heck of a lot. We're talking 200 to 300 million. Do that. It apparently reportedly supposedly sold about 1.2 million, which is shy of the 2 to 3 million I was guessing, which means it did not make back the money. It did not break even, actually, making the money back from what it used to essentially make this game, right? Sony acquired Bungie for quite a bit, to be totally honest. So let's take a look at that real quick. How much did Sony pay? How much Bungie? Real quick, 3.6 billion. I knew it was a big number. It was a big number. I couldn't remember how big that number was. So Sony paid for Bungie $3.6 billion. Holy snap. And then Bungie essentially put about, what, 200 to 350 million, something into Marathon. they've made back a total of apparently, reportedly, possibly 55 million. And that, of course, doesn't actually factor in other things like site fees and stuff from Steam or Microsoft or anybody else like that. So they have clearly missed the mark. They are below expectations. So when that earnings call comes around and Sony has to, report on how well or how bad Marathon missed the mark, we're going to get that it did not meet sales expectations, as we have gotten with several other games, like for instance Dragon Age the Felguard, High Guard that got shut down, Star Wars, Star Wars, what is that Star Wars game that came out, it was what was that other thing, Concord, High Guard, I can't remember them at this point. There's definitely a pattern going on right here. But yeah, so I've been told that the numbers don't matter, but the numbers absolutely will matter at some point in time, because the thing is, the more that number goes down, this number here, see, this is the difference. Let me explain this real quick. Why is it that it is bad that this number goes down, and why you should absolutely, if you love this game, not want this number to go down and pay attention? You should be yelling at Bungie to make this number go up. Bungie is a AAA game, or AAA studio, being funded by a AAA studio, right? They had the backing of a AAA studio. This number needs to be big to keep those people employed and to prevent layoffs. If this number no big, they get layoffs. Somebody is going to bite the thing. Now, the real question is, will they shut down Marathon itself? I don't know, to be totally honest. Mainly because Sony did pay so much for Bungie, and Sony needs to justify its acquisition of Bungie in some way, shape, or form. So I just don't see them doing, like, I know there are people out there who have talked, and it's like it's going to be Concord and all this other stuff, and it's like, no, see, Concord was made by an unknown studio that nobody has heard of until Concord, right? Nobody knew who they were. Nobody was even paying attention to them until we found out about Concord. And then suddenly everybody knew who they were for a hot second, and then we forgot who they were again. And then Sony shut them down. It's different when you have a small studio, or you've acquired a small studio that, doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, but this is Bungie we're talking about. This is the maker of Halo, the maker of Destiny, actually good games that were made at one point in time before they were, bastardized by 343 or their own company in the form of Destiny, where they have essentially, destroyed Destiny, and they have fallen into the same pitfalls that they already fell into with Destiny. For instance, like, what was it, the shaders, and then they had the stickers, same thing, a different cosmetic thing, but the exact same thing, and they fell straight into that pitfall once again with Marathon. Like, how do you do that unless you're aiming to do that on purpose for some reason? They just keep doing this, and it's just one of those things. It's like, guys, there's no reason for you to have fallen into that. But anyway, the hope is really strong with this one. And when it boils down to it, when it really does it, and it all boils down to it, is usually somebody responding with, I don't care. Because the other thing, besides the whole, we don't care about player numbers, the other thing was, what was it? Quality. That's right. Quality was the other cope I kept hearing, because look at this 85.08. Look at these good reviews from things like IGN. This game has quality, and that's fine. I mean, it's a Bungie product. Of course, there's going to be quality, especially when it comes to like something like the game or gameplay, when it comes to the gunplay and stuff, because this is something Bungie has done really good over the years. And I'm not doubting that the quality is bad, although a lot of people are put off by the aesthetics. And then there was the whole, them stealing us, art from somebody, passing it off as their own, getting caught, blah, 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 and all that stuff, which of course was another thing that Bungie apparently is well known for doing lately. And they keep falling into those same pitfalls. No, it's just like, guys, okay. But that's the other cope is quality. And it's like, guys, I don't think quality is going to keep these developers at their jobs. Quality is not going to pay the bills. Quality is not going to keep the lights on. Quality is not going to give Sony something to look back on and say, oh gosh, I'm so glad the quality was there. No, it's not going to do any of that stuff. So yeah, you want this number to go big. And this number was not big at all. On top of that, you have to think about this. This is their main competitor for the most part, right? They're both extraction shooters in their own thing, and they're extraction shooter by a indie studio that came out before them. Still was doing better than them. And it's been doing way better than them for a long time. And that's just like, guy, this is not a good look for a AAA game from a AAA studio. It really isn't. You know, this is something you would expect from a non-AAA studio, maybe, you know, an indie studio or something. Meanwhile, you got the indie scene doing way better. And then there's a difference too. Because I think somebody linked something, I don't quite remember. I was busy at work, something about a movie. And it's like, you do know that there's like a complete difference between like a movie, video games for starters, and then there's like a complete difference between a single player video game and like a live service game, right? So, you know, you take this, you know, Felguard's going to be here, even though they failed, they missed sales expectations, they floundered and flopped. You can still go buy Felguard and enjoy it. It's a single player game. If you want to go play it, go play it. These games here, these are live services. Once these go down, and they will eventually go down because they are, again, live services, you can't go back and re-enjoy those. You know, that's the difference. If this number isn't big enough to keep the lights on, the game goes dark. Therefore, you're not playing said game. Meanwhile, you can go pick this game up, you know, 10 years down the road, you know, providing Steam's still there and everything, on Windows 20, and you're still playing it with no problem. You know, meanwhile, something like Marathon, no, they shut that down 20 years ago, therefore you're not playing it at all. But anyway, so I just thought the cope was absolutely insane today. I just wanted to share it with y'all, and yeah, that's about all I got. So do the whole thing where you like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.